What's going on, everybody? Off the Mic Sports Network here, another edition of Off the Top Rope. First of all, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. In terms of wrestling, there's not a whole hell of a lot to be thankful for. Both these products, the major North American products, WWE and AEW, have been pretty dreadful this year. AEW, listen, by the standards of good wrestling and what AEW kind of builds themselves up to be, this was a fine show. But given the context of what followed Full Gear on Saturday and what we got in this show on Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving, as we head into the final month of 2025, and we've got one more pay-per-view to go that we're building to. It was kind of by the numbers and pretty ordinary and pretty basic. And the wrestling was fine, which you expect that from this company. But in terms of a follow-up show to set the stage for the next month of your television leading into World's End, this was an awful bit of television. And it's basically the same shit, different year. Same shit, different year. This whole thing post Thanksgiving is dominated by the Continental Classic. The Continental Classic is basically just a tournament with, some of the established guys and just a bunch of other dudes. Like there's about 4 or 5 guys out of the 12 team field where you're like, or the 12 men field that, you really think, hey, they've got a shot to win this. And this dominated the 2-hour broadcast. And you're like looking around and you're like, okay, we had a new world champion crowned on Saturday. Shouldn't that be like the most important thing? Should it open or close the show? I would have opened the show. It didn't. We had wrestling throughout the entire night. In the middle of the show, we had Samoa Joe, and not really even author much of an explanation about what the hell happened in that cage. Hangman and Swerve. I think it's a cool pairing that but we don't even hear from either one of these guys as to why they may be united in facing off against the odds. So, like, in that point, the women, we got a women's match on this show, which was, hey, Sisters of Sin taking on Babes of Wrath. And then we also found out that, hey, we're going to get, predictably, another street fight that we're going to get next week as the stipulation that Toni Storm picked for her match. And Toni Storm kind of verbally went after Jon Moxley, which was a little bit interesting. Jon Moxley, everybody was like, oh, Jon Moxley's going to lose every match in this tournament, even though he's in this tournament. He won against Mascara Dorado, who's not even signed to AEW in the first place. He's a CMLL guy. So it's just, I get frustrated weekly with this television show. Like, listen, let's be real here. A lot of people are going to be smart asses on the internet and compare the Last Time Is Now tournament to this, this Continental Classic. The Last Time Is Now tournament has been a bad tournament. The end goal feels like a much bigger prize than whatever's going on in the Continental Classic. The Continental Classic is going to be an infinitely better worked and booked tournament than whatever the heck has gone on with this Last Time Is Now tournament, which has been so predictable and so ridiculous. And yes, on some level, Continental Classic will be kind of predictable because the guys who are probably going to win and probably advance in this thing, but it's round robin, so you get yourself through a bunch of weeks of television. But the prize at the end of the tunnel is a fucking joke. Like, we need to talk about that at a certain point because, hey, we're having a Continental Classic. We have a bunch of just guys in there, and they're fighting over basically nothing. At least in the Last Time Is Now tournament, you're fighting over the right to be John Cena's last opponent, which is effectively a WrestleMania match. Continental Classic means nothing, and there's a lot of problems that I need to explore with that. Chris Statlander retained the women's championship. I had a couple of smart asses in the comments, and they know who they are, who are big Mercedes marks and whatever. And they say, hey, I'm so excited to see where this Mercedes thing goes. So he wasn't even on the fucking show. Chris Statlander got like a minute of television. We had the tag team tournament, which, by the way, I love Willow and I love Harley Cameron. But the tag team tournament with all the established names, we have now resorted to thrown together teams that are going to be in the finals. Because either you're going to get Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa advancing, or you're going to get Megan Bayne and Marina Shafir advancing. You're going to get one of those two teams facing the Babes of Wrath. And if you ask me, If you ask me who I wanted to win the championships in this spot, I would say Megan Bayne and Marina Shafir, because at least that's some level of interest. But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword, like, because I'm like, okay, do I want them to hold the tag team titles, which really are not going to mean much, or do I want either one of these to be an established heel in this division to potentially go after Chris Statlander and, maybe make an intriguing monster heel in this division that is sorely needed. But the show was dominated by a bunch of wrestling. And then the world championship, you have a world championship title change. You have a return of one of your biggest stars, and you had to wait an hour for it to happen. This company just never learns, man. They never learn. They stick to their guns. They think they think they're hot shit. They got their money last year, and they think that they can just do whatever the fuck they want. And you're sitting after 11,000 people in Newark on Saturday that everybody trumpeted. You got 1,300 people at a music hall in fucking Nashville. Like, seriously. Real American Freestyle is going to have, which is a new promotion, who one of their founders is not alive anymore, in Hulk Hogan. Like, that's doing better than you. A new promotion. Like, holy shit, man. Like, does this company just not want to change anything about what they do? It's the same patterns every single month. We get staggered builds, stories come together in the final couple of weeks before the pay-per-view, and then we have these thrown together cards that we are not even emotionally invested in, and they basically equate to a Dynamite Collision card. And World's End, you already know 3 matches that are going to be on this show right away. You're going to have the semifinals of the Continental Classic and the championship for the Continental Classic. And last year, we bastardized that thing just to get to Okada and Omega. And believe me, I'm going to have some thoughts on how this tournament has already been booked by Tony Khan, because it pisses me off. It really bothers me. Like, admittedly, let me be clear. The amount of good wrestling that we're going to get in the next month is going to be really good. There's a lot of talented performers and a lot of guys, but there's not a lot of emotional investment, and there's not a lot of star power to really care. The same problem that's being had really in the Last Time Is Now tournament, where there's not a lot of stars there and it's pretty obvious who's going to win, but at least the prize at the end of the tunnel, even though we know who's going to win, it's going to be Gunther. The prize at the end of the tunnel feels infinitely more important than what they're fighting for in this. And like I said, I can get to that at another point. And then the women, there's not a lot of investment there. You basically had one women's tag team championship match. Your women's champion, who beat the queen woman in this company, gets no celebration, yet Mercedes Moné gets a celebration for every championship that she's won. And people are trying to convince me that, hey, Mercedes' downfall is going to be a big story on this show. And some people were telling me, hey, this is against. It's like, guys, we're not going to see Mercedes very much. And who knows? Maybe World's End will be where she ultimately loses the championship, and maybe we build something there. Who knows? But the fact that she wasn't there, the fact that Chris Statlander didn't get a highlighted spot on this show, considering of what a monument, that doesn't make that feel any more important. And then, the World Championship, which, like you said, you had a World Championship title change at the end of your pay-per-view, and one of your biggest stars came back and aligned with a guy who he had maybe the greatest feud this company has ever seen. We've still got no verbal dialogue. We've got no explanation about why these guys are aligned. We've got no explanation of what the hook heel turn. Very basic stuff. It was a very lethargic and very much like, a basic show. And like I said, the wrestling itself is not the issue here. The wrestling is fine. Like, Fletcher and Okada had a really good match. I love watching Claudio wrestle. I mean, Jon Moxley, when you take out the blood and the nonsense there, is a very entertaining performer. But this is the same shit, different year with the Continental Classic, and it's frustrating that there's no storyline progression, and this is going to be the same cycle. We're going to wait a couple weeks, and then we'll probably get some sort of world title match that'll get thrown together, or some sort of way with Samoa Joe defending the world title. Maybe MJF comes back, and that's another thing. MJF's not there. There's just not a lot to really, enjoy about this show. It's just like I said, if you like good wrestling, which is what the sickos do, it's fine. But if you're trying to hook in more people or you're trying to keep people interested, you got to give them story. And there's none of that here. There's not a whole hell of a lot of it going on in WWE. They're relying on their star power to get them through Survivor Series, which is a problem in itself. And then John Cena's retiring in a few weeks. So, but yeah, both these companies, there's not a lot to be thankful in wrestling right now. But AEW is just sticking to their guns and just doing what they know rather than taking risks. And it's really frustrating. So anyway, I got to get into the Continental Classic and just the formation of this tournament and what they've done. It really bothered me. This is really honestly one of the worst decisions I think that Tony Khan's ever made. So anyway, we'll talk about that later on. I'll see you guys soon. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye bye.